Combating corruption, fraud, economic crime, the rule of law, public finance and good governance. Nihal Sri Ameresekere, Certified Fraud Examiner, member of the International Consortium on Governmental Financial Management, International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities, American Bar Association and the Global Anti-Corruption Task Force, presents 12 books highlighting case studies of great contemporary public interest. The books are published and marketed by Author House US, the leading print-to-order publisher and marketer in the US. The books were presented at important international forums in Washington, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore and Morocco. This is the first public presentation of the books in Sri Lanka in the city of Jaffna. The initial launch of the first 5 books was held in May 2012 in Washington, D.C., and the event was marked with an interview with Nihal by Beatrice Edwards, Executive Director of the Government Accountability Project, the largest whistleblower organization in the U.S. Fraud on Sri Lanka Government, Volume 1. Legal proceedings in a derivative action on the Hilton Hotel construction fraud with a successful judgment by Supreme Court, reported in the Commonwealth Commercial Law Reports, exposing scandalous endeavours to cover up, including views of the Minister of Constitutional Affairs. Sri Lanka Insurance Privatisation. Insurance privatisation annulled by Supreme Court as wrongful, unlawful and illegal in a public interest litigation, revesting in the state with Ernst & Young and PricewaterhouseCoopers chartered accountants castigated. This was at a presentation of the book to Dr. Ye Feng, Secretary General of the International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities, Director General of International Cooperation, and Vice President of International Association of Prosecutors. Derivative hedging deals. The scandalous complex oil hedging deals perpetrated on Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the state by Standard Chartered Bank, Citibank and Deutsche Bank, analytically exposed, demonstrating unequal treatment before the law. Colombo Port bunkering privatization. Bunkering privatization annulled by Supreme Court as unlawful, illegal, fraudulent and revested in the state. The Secretary to the Treasury being directed to vacate public office, but later reinstated at the behest of the President, with 2 material pages of dissenting judgment cannibalized. This was at a presentation of the book to Dr. Eduardo Verte, former Director Division for Treaty Affairs, UNODC, Vice President, International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities, responsible for mooting the adoption by UN General Assembly in October 2003 of the UN Convention Against Corruption. IMF, World Bank and ADB Agenda on Privatization Volume 1 discloses in detail how, contrary to policy enunciated to the Parliament, the nationalized plantations had been brazenly pillaged and plundered through a process of dubious privatizations, some with fraudulent deals causing losses to the state. Lack of public accountability exposes fiscal mismanagement, lack of public accountability, and the Supreme Court pronouncement of a perverse amnesty as antithetic to the rule of law and a fraud on the state, and includes a successful challenge to the appropriation bill, which exposed the operation of a slush fund sans parliamentary control. This was at a presentation of the book to Dr. Timothy Tong, Commissioner of the prestigious Independent Commission Against Corruption, Hong Kong, where the rule of law is strictly enforced with civil society supervision over the Commission. To combat fraud and corruption. A useful handbook dealing with the UN Convention Against Corruption and exposing the duplicity of international agencies' commitment to combat fraud and corruption with no real action taken, and deals with the subject of corruption, including in SAARC countries who are blind thereto. This was at a presentation of the book to Professor Nikos Passas, School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, Northeastern University in America, who is also a visiting faculty member of the UN International Anti-Corruption Academy, Vienna. Fraud on Sri Lanka Government, Volume 2. The Hilton Hotel construction fraud well documented with irrefutable evidence of criminality disclosing attempts to cover up by Ford, Rhodes, Thornton and Company, chartered accountants and law enforcement authorities due to socio-political influences. IMF, World Bank and ADB Agenda on Privatization, Volume 2, exposes how several privatization deals had been carried out, causing losses to the state, contrary to the objectives of privatization, thereby eroding the confidence of the people and the lack of enforcement of the rule of law. This was at a presentation of the book to Professor Cao Jiangming, Prosecutor General of China and the President of International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities. Fraud on Sri Lanka Government, Volume 3, exposes as to how international pressures force a settlement of the Hilton fraud and how the Minister of Justice acts perversely to prevent the enforcement of the rule of law. Overseas corporate structures which hide real owners discloses how funds and assets are stashed away, hidden in a mire of corporate structures with nominee directors, shareholders and trustees, and real owner being beneficiaries, posing a challenge to tracing and recovering assets siphoned to foreign regimes. This was at a presentation of the book to Mr. Martin Kretner, Chairman, UN International Anti-Corruption Academy, which was set up recently in Vienna to educate and train persons in anti-corruption endeavors. Socio-political realities exposes with documentary evidence of socio-political and diplomatic maneuvers to compromise weak states by powerful and affluent states, and how a judiciary is compromised to approve bills ultra vires the Constitution. This was at a presentation of the book to Mr. Dimitri Vlasis, UN Secretary-General's representative and chief, UN Corruption and Economic Crime Office, who is also in charge of conducting reviews, monitoring the implementation by states of UN Convention Against Corruption. This was at a recent anti-corruption seminar of the International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities held in Dalian, China. The books are available globally on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Google Books, W.H. Smith, Borders, Angus & Robertson, NBC India, Kalahari.com, Alibris, Booktopia, abebooks.com, and from the publishers Arthur House US and their offices in UK.